There are numerous supports embedded in your child's eBook for their CPM course. I'm going to open the Math 1 book right now and show you where your student can find them. In this first column, if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll find the tab Reference. And in the Reference tab, there is a list of student supports. Each of these is something embedded right in their eBook where they can access it easily. My very favorite is the Homework Help button. This Homework Help tab will be next to problems right embedded in the lessons as students are doing their homework if they need a hint or are stuck on a problem. As a sample, let's look at chapter 2, lesson 1.4. In this lesson, these are the questions they were learning about in class. These are the first problems that they learned about with their teacher in the class. There is a section that summarizes the learning with formulas and vocabulary. And then we come to the review preview section, which is where most of the homework problems your students are given are assigned from. Some students are used to working on these from their hard book. Others have teachers who take pictures of these problems and put them on paper, so the student doesn't have to carry the book. So your students need to know that by accessing their ebook, they can get help on the problems they're stuck on. For instance, if they were stuck on this particular problem, when they open up that help, they can ask for hints on any of the problems. On problem A, they give one method that was shown in the math notes box, or they give them an option of another method, walking them through step by step. If this isn't enough, there's a second hint you can get, and it tells them how to use the SLUB formula. Just as if a teacher was sitting next to them, it won't do that for every single problem. On this second problem, for instance, it just says C part A. It wants them to try to apply what they gave to them in the first one on this second problem. But as a problem gets more difficult, this one particularly has a vertical line, they will add extra information that they need to know for that specific type of problem. So very helpful. Also on this page, remember to encourage them to check their math notes if they don't remember something, because things are summarized there. And if you are wanting them to talk out what they've learned with you, a tutor, an older brother or sister, the learning logs are a great place that summarize learning over big chunks of the chapter. And so that's a great place to have them work through and make sure they know the answers to all of that. Now let's look back down at that references section. And remember, we went to the section called Student Support. We've already looked at homework help, learning logs, math notes. Another fabulous piece of help is the parent guide. The parent guide is designed for anybody who wasn't in class for the lesson or needs a review on what happened in class. And so it doesn't just have to be for parents. Students, especially students who are absent or just wanting to review, can come and look at this. The lesson we were just looking at was 2.1.4. And if we check the parent guide version of this, we'll see a summary of what they learned, vocabulary and formulas, a series of examples getting more difficult, including finally that vertical line piece that we saw in that one problem. And then they will have a set of problems that they can practice on, usually between 15 and 25 problems that they can choose to practice on, and all of those answers, so they can work on them until they feel confident that they know what's going on in the current grade level learning. In addition, besides the parent guide, there's one other thing down here in references called the checkpoints. And checkpoints are included in each chapter. Here's the checkpoint for chapter 1, the checkpoint for chapter 2, and they're connected to an actual problem that is in the chapter. So if I look at the checkpoint for chapter 2, you'll see that it's problem 203, problem 103 in chapter 2. And these are always about topics that are learned in previous chapters or previous courses that students often struggle with. And so if we want to look back in the chapter to see where it was, it turns out it was in it was right here in the review preview. You can recognize it because it has a big check mark next to it. And this checkpoint is about order of operations. So they ask them to do these 6 problems, and then they say, check your answers by referring to the material in the back of your book, if you're carrying your hard book, or by following this link to the page we were just on previously. And basically says to them that they're expected to master this. This is going to come up again, and this is the time to deal with this learning if it's not quite finished. These kinds of problems will show up on their assessments because they're embedded throughout this chapter. And so it's important part of studying for tests to study the checkpoints. So if we look back at what's in that checkpoint, it's very similar to the parent guide, except for on previous learning. It's going to give the answers to the 6 problems, a short summary of how to do those problems with a couple examples. And then those specific 6 problems worked out. So if they kind of knew what they were doing but made a little mistake, they can find their error. And again, a set of 15 to 25 problems that they can try, and all the answers, so they can feel confident that they are understanding what's going on in those. In addition to all the supports that are embedded in the student's book for your student, there's also a link on your handout that says Help Your Student CPM. And this is much more general, but this is targeted for you. On this page, they have a summary of habits, successful learning habits that you can encourage your student to build into their studying. There's some talk about how to behave effectively in class to get the most out of your learning time in class, along with some videos. And then my favorite part is there's some questions you can ask your student to help them get going. The first pull-down menu says questions to use when working. This is just to get them started, some questions you might use. And then the next one, once they've started, but they're maybe just to keep them going, here's some questions you could use. And finally, if they are feeling stuck, here's some questions and suggestions that you can have for them. And so this is a really helpful page for you, and that's why we've included that link on your handout.